This is the Seahawkers Podcast, episode 397. I'm Brandon Schultz of the Military Seahawkers, and joining me, my good buddy and Montana Seahawker, Adam Emmert.
Yeah, man. Nice to be here with you this fine morning, because this podcast is the type that we like to have, because that was a win, baby. And honestly, a fairly convincing one throughout.
It was a convincing win, but at the same time, it was convincing in that it was relatively easy. They get out to an early lead. They get some turnovers. It seemed like they put the game away kind of early. And then I also felt like the Jets kind of shot themselves in the foot in this game, in that they continued to play a hurt Mike White, who was clearly struggling to complete passes to open receivers. They had a quarterback on the bench that we saw the week before, and Chris Streveler, who could run the football. I thought that they would make that switch to just pound the rock at some point in the game. They didn't. And it just, I felt like it made it easy on the team.
It's really crazy to watch the last few weeks of opposing coaches not take full advantage of the fact that the Seahawks couldn't stop their grandmother in the backfield. Like, I don't get it. And then he heard Robert Saleh come out at halftime and give his little halftime interview to whoever the sideline reporter was and be like, yeah, we're going to come out here and run the ball. Because at that point, I mean, it was what, 17-3?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, there were still
it's only a
two-score
game.
Right.
Yeah. There's no reason to abandon the run game, especially when you know that the team has a massive weakness for it. And especially when Mike White is clearly missing throws. If White's on, that game might be completely different.
Yeah. And actually it was closer than that. It was 17-6 at halftime.
There you go. Yeah, that's right. 11 point. And somehow they don't come out and just pound the hell out of the rock. And we've seen the last 3 or 4 opposing coaches not really commit to running the football. The last team to really commit to it was the Panthers, maybe.
I feel like that was the last team that really committed to it. And they've taken that approach now throughout the rest of the season.
Oh, absolutely. And they're just, ramming it down everybody's throat. But it was convincing in the sense that it never really got closer than that 11-point threshold there. And it also was a very frustrating game in some ways, because while the defense didn't give up a ton of points in this game, you watched and you're like, oh yeah, that's that same defense that we've seen pretty much all year. And then you saw the offense, after a hot start, just start to really have massive struggles when they got past the opponent's 40 in settling for field goal attempts and or knocking themselves out of field goal range with just typical Seahawks kind of drives when they got down in there. Right before half, they get down to about the 30. I'm like, oh, sweet. All they have to do is not take a sack and not have a big penalty, and they can kick a field goal here. First down, sack. Second down, incomplete. Third down, incomplete. Punt from the opponent's 45.
Yeah.
It just stinks. So yeah, you did see the offense have some struggles going down the stretch in terms of scoring touchdowns, and that was kind of a bummer.
It was a bummer, but it wasn't. Just because of the fact that they had such a comfortable lead, I wasn't as concerned. Now, I guess there was some concern when they missed the field goal in the second half at the point to where it would have put it up 3 scores instead of just 2.
Yep.
And that was the time where you thought, oh, here we go. This is the opportunity for the Jets to flip the switch and turn the game around, get a little bit of momentum then in the fourth quarter. And I suppose at that point too, the defense in the second half, knowing that the Jets had kind of abandoned the run game, that's when we saw Darrell Taylor. He had an outstanding game in this game because you didn't have to worry about him going after the run. He could just try and beat up on his former teammate, Dwayne Brown.
And George Fant.
Yeah.
So a lot of people with the big praise for Darrell Taylor after this last game. He has been so unbelievably inconsistent and disappointing all year that for me to go and be like, man, Darrell Taylor, what a game, after he goes out against ancient Dwayne Brown and George Fant, who is still a basketball player and not an offensive lineman, and be like, yeah, there he is. And against bad competition that was in a bad position, boy, Darrell Taylor really shined. What a great game.
Well, it shows you what type of position this Seahawks defensive line has to be in to be able to play adequately. They have to be in these positions of a big lead, a team that abandons the run, and from there they did decently. Now, one of the bummers, we saw Jordan Brooks go down with an ACL injury. He went to IR this week. We're going to see what Tanner Muse has from here on out, but it puts more pressure on a linebacking core that's had some struggles this season.
For sure. One of the best players on defense, and a guy that we all really, really like. I mean, that's the opposite of Darrell Taylor, right? I can be like, Jordan Brooks is a baller, especially up around the line of scrimmage. And he's just made a ton of tackles this year. And it doesn't look like Bobby, but who's going to look like Bobby? Right. He's pretty damn good. So that's a massive blow, because now when does he come back? Mid-season next season? Something like that?
Unless he's got Adrian Peterson blood and is able to turn around quickly. But so far we've seen like one guy have that.
Yeah, just a couple, a handful at best, right? So that's a bummer. And that kind of makes me think about this next game, if not the next couple games, depending on how things go. I don't really care if they win or lose for the most part. It's been a successful season. I'd love to have a winning record. If we don't, then that's fine. If we make the playoffs, great. If we don't, fine. It will have a little better draft pick. I just don't want any injuries. I don't want any major injuries. That's all I'm rooting for, is just no major injuries.
Right. Like we had with Brooks last week. We want to avoid things like that.
You know, especially to guys like Geno, or we haven't even touched on Ken Walker yet. I mean, the Seahawks did get out to that early lead because bang, right out of the gate, Ken Walker with the
first
big
play of the game
just rips one, right? And he had a great game. He looked really good. And he got it to the outside, which is his forte now and then, but he also cut it up inside and just took what was there a number of times. That's the type of balance that when this Seahawks team is hitting on all cylinders, that's when it looks really good. And you can see the difference in the offense.
Well, it even looked good with the receivers being shut down. I mean, DK on Gardner. Sauce Gardner had him relatively locked up. They tried DK multiple times. They to the point to where it looked like they were forcing it to DK just in the hopes that, maybe Woolen could get that edge. And he nearly did. I mean, Woolen almost had a pick six to start out early in the second half when Dixon punted him down to the 1 inch line, essentially. And Tariq just sitting on that throw to the outside almost got there in time. So, and he had another one where he had an opportunity. So you had that ability to see. Now, I don't think that Mike White threw Tariq's direction too much, except when it was wide open opportunities. Mm-hmm. But it looked like they were going to try and get a touchdown on Sauce every time they were in the red zone. And it resulted in a couple pass breakups for Gardner.
It surely helps when you seem to get star calls when you're a whopping 17 weeks into your career. Is it just because his name is Sauce? Is that what the deal is? Like, he gets so much extra respect from the media and the officials. This dude, I went back and watched a bunch of his stuff because of the competition between him and Tariq for the Defensive Rookie of the Year title. This guy gets away with more face guarding in DPI than I think probably any other corner in the league. He is so handsy. He's grabbing dudes all the time. And the thing is when he does turn around and look for the ball, it's almost after it gets there. It's so late. Uh-huh. And he just gets right up in people's faces. And
that's why he can't intercept it. He turns his head way too late to even be able to catch it.
That's exactly right. He gets away with it. The refs never call it. So he locked up DK. Okay. a lot of corners could lock up DK if they were allowed to play the way that Sauce is. Tariq is so much better in every aspect of his game. I don't get it. I understand that he's got nice numbers. I know he was a high draft pick. He's got a cool name. But when you watch the play on the field, if they ever start to call the rules the way they're supposed to be called, he's going to have a rough career.
Yeah, I guess we'll see in terms of how he's viewed by the officials in the future. But yeah, Tariq definitely playing the game within the rules and able to, because of his speed, I think, make up for a lot of that difference. And I even think that with Gardner and his length, he's able to break up a lot of those passes. I think about the one slant to DK in the end zone where he gets his hand on it. The one where with Cade Johnson, he kind of came from behind and got his hand in there at the last minute. A couple of nice pass breakups on those two occasions, covering DK kind of on the sideline. I think that was more the face guarding one, but he did it in a way that I don't think that there was contact early enough for an official to be able to call it with the face guarding.
I can promise you with every fiber of my being that if that was a Seahawks defender in that position, the flag would have been thrown. There's a reason why Tariq doesn't play as physical as Sauce, because he tried to early on in the season and he was getting flagged.
He was getting flagged a lot early on.
Yeah, so he's like, oh, okay, I guess I just have to use my speed and play off a little bit and all that stuff. Sauce gets away with murder out there. He absolutely does. I'm not saying he's not good, because he is good. He has, just like you said, he's got length, he's got good timing, a lot of those things. But catfish him. I wish Tariq was able to play the way that Sauce plays, was allowed to play that way.
Well, I think part of that, too, is DJ Reed on the opposite side, another guy who plays very physical. And I think he has to, because of his size, being one of the smaller corners, he has to play physically, and he does it well, though. And so maybe it's just that aspect of, gosh, the Legion of Boom was physical and probably got away with a lot of stuff because they were so physical so often, and you can't call it on every single play. And so you just have to call the egregious stuff. And I see some similarities there.
I could follow you on that because, yeah, the LOB did play awful physical and got away with some murder now and then. No doubt about it. And Sauce is getting that treatment right now as a rookie, and it drives me crazy. And also, too, just we've talked about it before, just the shoe-in for Defensive Rookie of the Year for Sauce over Tariq is just, are you even watching?
Well, based on that game, I think people are going to come away with the idea that Sauce won the matchup.
Really?
I think if you went into that game with that idea already in your head, that, yeah, you're going to come away with that because you saw the pass breakups.
Tariq had a couple pass breakups, too. He gave up a hitch against Garrett Wilson and then a crosser.
But it was pass breakups on DK in the end zone. And I think that's what people are going to come away with, that DK had the stat line of one catch for 3 yards, primarily being covered by Gardner in the red zone.
Yeah,
that's what people are going to take away. If they already had that preconceived notion, that's what's going to stick with them. I guarantee it.
You're not wrong. I just don't like it, but you're not wrong.
Well, one thing that is wrong, I feel like, as we go into this final game against the Los Angeles Rams, it's wrong with the way the NFL scheduled this. And I know that I've had to hear from people, oh, well, the Seahawks, man, if you just win one of those games against the NFC South, then you don't put yourself in this position.
Or the Raiders or the Panthers. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Panthers, NFC South. But yeah, Raiders, another bad team. They had opportunities to win the game, so they aren't counting on one final win to get in the playoffs, or even counting on the Lions to win so they can break up any tiebreaker scenario. But I am still peeved that the NFL, with this opportunity to flex games into prime time, that they chose not to play the Lions, Packers, and Seahawks, Rams at the same time on Sunday.
What's the difference?
If the Seahawks win like they're supposed to against the Rams, then the Lions, they have spoiler to play. which is fine, but it's not the same as winning in.
I guess. I just think that if you're a Detroit Lion, number one, Dan Campbell, no matter the situation, isn't going to let you loaf it out there. He's going to have them fired up and ready to go.
Sure.
And on top of all of that, they've been playing hard all year, and it looked like they were way out of it for the longest time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like the Packers. And then thirdly, that Lions-Packers rivalry, quote unquote, I mean, it's been awfully one-sided for a long time. Can you imagine how motivated many of those Lions players are to finally stick it to Aaron Rodgers and the stupid Packers? I that's just as much motivation as winning in. I don't think it makes a big difference. I don't really care when they scheduled it. It's all about the same. You just got to go out there and play the games. I don't know.
It makes a difference. Just as you were thinking going into this final game, you don't want a season-ending injury to happen to someone like Ken Walker or Geno or Tariq. If you're a Lions player and you're going into that game, yeah, you're fired up that you want to beat Rodgers. But if you see a big hit coming and you think it has that potential to ding you going into the offseason, or even you want to avoid those big injuries going into the offseason, what do you have to play for? It's not the playoffs at that point if you know the outcome of the Seahawks-Rams.
I think if you're an NFL player, then you decided before the season even started if you're going to make business decisions out there or you're going to play football. I think it's a reactionary sport. In those moments, I don't think there's too many dudes. Like the dudes that do make business decisions out there,
yeah,
they've been doing it for weeks. They didn't just start, week 18. The dudes who don't make business decisions, they don't give a crap, dude, because the way that they think is if I throttle back, that's when I get hurt.
I would love to have your pie in the sky approach to just believing that the Lions are professional and that they're going to play the Packers hard and that sort of thing. I also don't like the fact that the NFL, by scheduling this, makes it look like they want the Seahawks to lose to the Rams. Because if they had their way, you absolutely think that they want the Packers-Lions to be a win and in type scenario, because they've shown that that's what they want whenever they place a team in this prime time slot on the final week of the season. You go back last year, it was Raiders-Chargers. Winner gets in, loser is out. In 2020, it wasn't that scenario, but it was Washington playing for the NFC East title. In 2019, it was 49ers Seahawks. Winner gets the NFC West title, loser doesn't. 2018, Colts Titans, winner in, loser out. And this is the thing that pisses me off the most researching this. Back in 2017, when they didn't have one of those games where the winner gets in and the loser gets out, they just didn't freaking have an evening game. They scheduled them all in the afternoon.
Okay.
So they've set this precedent that they want a winner in, loser out type game. The Seahawks losing would fix that. And I think that that's what the NFL wants.
Okay. Couple things there. So when has the NFL not wanted compelling games in primetime? When? Like what year did that start? 1956?
Well, they've always wanted it. It was 2006.
Okay, all right,
it was 2006 when they gave themselves the flexibility to flex games, though.
Okay. So then the question remains, if they want a potentially compelling game, out of all the matchups, who would you have flexed in otherwise to the Sunday night game?
Titans-Jaguars, the one that they put on Saturday for some reason.
For some reason. So again, let's go with compelling. Who gives a shit about the Titans or the Jags? Practically nobody. That's a matchup that like what? So the winner of that wins the worst division in football or the second worst division in football? Hooray! Nobody cares.
Yeah, it's because it's not one of the East teams like when Washington played the Eagles. Like that wasn't that compelling of a matchup because the Eagles were bad that season and they were like a win would have flip-flopped their draft position, but Washington needed that win for the title. And so that's what because it's an East team, they put it in the primetime slot.
Ratings.
Yeah.
Ratings. Yeah, exactly. I mean, as far as the league wanting the Seahawks to lose against the Rams, they always have ever since they moved to LA. But even with that said, I mean, you got to choose one. And I guess if you're the NFL, you're like,
you don't have to choose any though. That's what in 2017, they just decided not to choose. They kept everybody in the time slot for competition purposes.
So in the 5 years since they've put up a evening game, it's almost like they learned something from 17. Like maybe they left some revenue on the table by not having an evening game. I just don't think this is nearly as nefarious as you seem to think it is. But it's okay. I've got a tinfoil hat that I made for Clinton and Wilson for the PNW Prop Stars show.
Yeah,
I can send it to, or I can bring it up tomorrow when I come up to Kalispell.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying it's not a bad move. You can bring this up in Prop Stars. It's not a bad move to put money on the Rams straight up for a win, and not a bad idea to put money on the Packers straight up for a win. So
100%. Now, if you want to get into some officiating over the course of this season and how that's affected some of the year for different teams, I'm not just talking Seahawks. I mean, like that one Commanders game where they just got freaking hosed. Like that was so bad.
Yeah.
So bad. There's been a lot of those games.
And the Commanders are where? Outside of the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Because the league definitely did not want to have a Dan Snyder story throughout the playoffs. So if you want to go that route, like I'm definitely with you. But either they win or they don't.
Well, I want to win. I want that evening game to be interesting to the point where I care about the Lions winning. Because if the Seahawks don't win against the Rams, then I care very little about the outcome of that game. Although I kind of want the Lions to stick it to Rodgers still.
Oh, I do too. I do not want this year's Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs. I just don't. He's just been so high and mighty like all year this year. I've had enough. I've had enough Aaron Rodgers in my life. It's a lot like Tom Brady. I've had enough Tom Brady in my life.
Yeah.
I all the respect. Tom Brady, greatest quarterback to ever play the game. Cool. I've had enough, Tom. Aaron Rodgers, one of the best talents I've ever seen play the game. I've had enough. You can go away now. Like I'm over it.
You're moving on to the Russell Wilson redemption arc.
That is happening. If you want to talk about what you should put money on going into this next year, I think that's a huge one. Because then I can root for him without feeling bad because it doesn't affect our outcome anymore. And we just happen to take his understudy and do really well. So thanks, Russ.
Well, we can talk a little bit more about that because it could be an intriguing rooting possibility depending on where the Broncos decide to go with their coaching search. But with this game coming up against the Rams with the Seahawks, now this is an opportunity to beat the Rams 2 times. A Sean McVay coached Rams team 2 times in the same season. It's never happened. Pete Carroll has that chance. Is it going to happen this year?
Well, it's a lot like the Lions-Packers game coming up here, right? Let's say the Seahawks win the against the Rams here, and the Lions aren't motivated to play the Packers in and all that. Are the Rams motivated to play the Seahawks because they're out of things? Or do they really enjoy playing spoiler to this franchise because that team is full of a bunch of dicks except for Bobby Wagner?
Yeah, where's all the media talk this week about whether to boo or not boo Bobby Wagner? Should we not be talking about that? Like, I feel like a player returning to his home, we're supposed to talk about whether or not to boo that particular player.
I think the discussion isn't there because everybody knows the answer, and that's you cheer Bobby Wagner. Like, it's not his fault that he's not here. He wanted to be here. That's the difference.
Yeah.
And for all the people that got mad at everybody for booing Russ, it's like, well, he didn't want to be here. So boo. But Bobby wanted to stay. So, I'm cheering him all the way. I love me some Bobby. Last time we see the Rams, they're hanging a 50 burger on the freaking Broncos.
They did hang 50 on Denver and that pretty good defense. But that team also quit to the point they got their coach fired. And so maybe mission accomplished for the Broncos that week against the Rams. Was there something else going on with that game too? I don't know. Was it Bobby Wagner getting his team fired up to play his former teammate, Russell Wilson? I still worry that with the emotion that Bobby played with the first time between these two teams, that he could get that defense motivated once again to play the Seahawks offense. And I don't like counting on a team quitting at the end of the season to be able to get the win. I just want to beat this Rams team.
I don't enjoy the idea of counting on a team to quit, but I do enjoy the idea of knowing that Baker Mayfield is unlikely to string together a couple really good games. So that I feel a lot better about.
He didn't have a good game against the Chargers. They got beat 31-10 last week.
Oh, that's right. Oh, I forgot they played the Chargers in between the Broncos game there. Yeah. Yeah, they got mollywomped there.
Yeah, Baker 11 of 19 for 132 yards, sacked 3 times, didn't have any picks, but ran for 8 yards. He did fumble at once. So he did have one turnover.
What Akers have?
Akers, he ran 19 attempts, 123 yards against the Chargers defense.
Damn, and he had a huge week against the Broncos as well.
Yeah, he's turning it on at the end of the season.
Yeah, and that's the one thing more so than whether Bobby has the defense turned up or not. This is what really concerns me is Cam Akers on a hot streak. I don't know how a mediocre back is able to put together a hot streak like that. It must be because the games don't really matter. But yeah, that terrifies me with this run defense for sure. And no Jordan Brooks.
No Jordan Brooks. And you have, and really, it's not just Akers. We saw in the last game, it was Brandon Powell. It was Tutu Atwell. Those receivers getting to the outside and testing the edges of this defense. I hope we have a good Tanner Muse game with him filling in now.
It's going to be necessary. But really, you can alleviate a lot of these problems if the Seahawks play really the one way that really works for them this season. And it's what you and Clinton have been talking about a lot. And it's the idea of getting up early and just allowing the pass rush to then just kind of pin its ears back and take the ball out of the running back's hands just by means of the score. Mm-hmm. So if that's the case, then I'm going to need Tyler Lockett to have a huge game. I'm going to need another Colby Parkinson eruption like last week. Whatever it is, it's going to need to happen early and often. And if it does, then I think this game is highly manageable for the Seahawks. If it doesn't, it's going to be a nail biter. And if I have to watch a Baker stat against the Seahawks to crush their playoff hopes for this year, I will be purchasing a new TV.
Yeah, because then I would have told you so, and that would all come rushing into it too. I hope it doesn't come to that. You don't need a new TV. You don't need. We
do need a new TV though, because after Brittany broke the last one, trying to kill a fly on it, then we brought out the backup one, and the remote doesn't work worth a darn. And it's really frustrating. And this TV seems to pull a lot of extra power because it's a Roku TV.
Oh.
And we don't use the Roku part.
Yeah.
So what's the point?
There you go. So maybe this TV just needs to be destroyed anyway. And Baker would give you that excuse if he were to get the win, but we don't want that. Save it. If the Seahawks win and then Rodgers beats the Lions, then you destroy it. Like, hopefully it can survive the Seahawks game and also survive the Lions-Packers game. It's going to be a rough Sunday for your TV.
It might be. It might be a great Sunday for my TV. It might get.
I just mean the stress of knowing that it has its demise hanging in the balance of 2 consecutive games.
Absolutely, yeah. It's in divisional rival games. Last week of the season, all that. There's a lot of pressure there. My TV's really scared right now. It's looking at me, being like, "Dude, really? Like,
we're gonna do this?
Can't we play nice this Sunday?"
I hope the Seahawks play nice and get some of their nice franchise records that they have the opportunity to get. Tyler Lockett just needs, a little over 30 yards or so to get to 1,000 yards on the season. It would be just the 3rd time in franchise history that the Seahawks had a pair of receivers over 1,000 yards in the same season. DK already over 1,000 yards. Geno has the opportunity with 151 yards to become the single season franchise leader in terms of passing yards. And I think he only has to complete like about 65% of his passes to be able to finish the season over 70% in terms of completion percentage, something that if he's able to do it only 12 other quarterbacks in the history of the NFL have done.
It's huge numbers, absolutely huge numbers, especially when you think that this offense has revolved around the passing game instead of the running game.
It has.
I mean, Chef Gino's been amazing this last season, and it rivals some of the best seasons of Russ, which is absolutely crazy. Like, there's no way that any of us thought that.
No, because even if you look back and say, okay, well, Russ, he played 16 game seasons. Gino's still only 150 yards behind Russ's best season right now.
Oh, yeah. So what does that tell you, right? I mean, not that yards are a huge deal for quarterbacks in my mind.
He's got nearly 30 touchdown passes.
That's what I was getting at. Touchdown interception ratio is huge. And then you talked about the completion percentage aspect of it. Completing over 70% of your balls that's monumental. That is
12 guys, 12 players in the history of the NFL have done it. Now, one of those players was Sam Bradford. Another one of those players was Ryan Tannehill. I think if you look at some of those, it's because they were completing short passes. Drew Brees did it multiple times. That's why it's been done more than 12 times, but it's because Drew Brees did it like 8 years out of his career, maybe 6 to 8 years out of his career. But you don't have to be a prolific quarterback name to finish in that category. But the way Gino's doing it, it's not just dink and dunk type passes.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see that filtered by yards per attempt as well, right?
Right. Once Gino finishes with that record, then we look it up and we determine that Gino is the best of all of the 70% or higher club. Like we do need to track that down eventually.
Yeah, exactly. If the stat doesn't exist, then if you just say something declarative like Gino is clearly the best quarterback out of all the quarterbacks to complete more than 70% of their passes, mainly because he didn't dink and dunk his way around the field. His yards per attempt is clearly the highest of all of them.
Never mind that Drew Brees did it 6 or 7 times, but exactly. We find a way to make Gino the best.
Sean Payton did that, not Drew Brees. We all know that. So yeah, we just say that it's true that Gino's the best of all those. And then it is until somebody puts in enough time to actually come up with the stats.
Yeah.
And we've already framed the narrative. Yeah. So nobody will care about the stats. They'll just know that it feels right that Gino's the best.
Yeah. It's kind of like the narrative that's been built with Sauce Gardner and the defensive rookie of the year.
That's exactly right. And I will hit on that again at the end of the podcast, because there is one particular individual who is not happy about that narrative.
I don't feel like there's really been an offensive rookie of the year standout. Does it have to break out one side or the other, or is there? I'm just having a hard time remembering. Do they do rookie of the year and then defensive rookie of the year, or do they do offensive rookie of the year and that's just the one that stands out because it's offense, and then defensive rookie of the year? Like if they've always done it separately.
Yeah.
Just because I think of it in terms of you have the MVP award and then they have the offensive player of the year award, which generally you would think that both those would be the same person. Especially if an offensive player is winning MVP, which is usually what happens. But they usually give that offensive player of the year award to somebody who's not a quarterback because they feel sorry for him because they don't generally win MVP. And all I'm getting at is I wonder if Gardner could win rookie of the year and then Tariq could get defensive rookie of the year.
I don't think there is just a rookie of the year. It's offensive rookie of the year and defensive rookie of the year.
It just blows up my whole wish.
It does. But you shouldn't have to wish for that, because Tariq Woolen is clearly the defensive rookie of the year. And I think with 65 yards against the Rams, Ken Walker could be the offensive rookie of the year, because that puts him over the magical 1,000-yard mark. And I think the media would kind of go crazy with that.
And I think that's easily doable for him if that's all he needs. I for some reason, I was thinking he was already over 1,000 yards, but maybe he's over 1,000 yards from scrimmage.
Yeah, I think he's at 936 rushing.
Okay. Yeah, 936, and then he has 155 receiving. So he is nearly at that 1,100-yard mark in terms of yards from scrimmage. But I think he could do it. I think he can do it against the Rams. Shoot. I like that we got to see, and hopefully we can see it again in this game against the Rams, the pairing of Dallas and Walker. I liked that they were complimentary. You had DJ Dallas getting the one big reception from Geno, the little flip pass. That was real fun. I want to see a big game from Walker so we can see more from Dallas too.
Sure. And I've come to really, I really enjoy watching Dallas run, not because he's particularly good or anything like that. I mean, he's fine. He's a fine back.
Yeah.
But not that he's as powerful or as impactful or anything like that. But just the way he moves when he's running the football, he reminds me so much of Marshawn. He just looks like him when he's running, not in terms of the way he hits and all that stuff. Just his build, his stride, the little bit of dreads hanging out the back. It just looks a little like him. And so I get the fizz from that because it's like, hey, it looks a little like Marshawn. I remember Marshawn. I love Marshawn. Can Marshawn come back? Can we get 10 year, a time machine and get 10 years ago Marshawn?
We all want Marshawn back. Is Marshawn in the Hall of Fame yet? He should be. We had some Hall of Fame announcements this week, but I don't think it's Marshawn's time yet.
Do you think Marshawn Lynch gets into the Hall of Fame?
Absolutely. Why would you keep Marshawn Lynch out of the Hall of Fame?
I don't know that he's got the stats, does he?
Of course he does. Terrell Davis has the stats to get in.
Not according to Terrell Davis.
If you think of the best running back to come out of the last 15 years in the NFL, other than the second half of Adrian Peterson's career, who do you go to?
I was going to say AP, Marshawn.
Frank Gore, who compiled a lot of yards. But if you had to choose, if you're an average NFL, like non-biased person who would say, I want Frank Gore or Marshawn Lynch in the Hall of Fame, who's the average person picking?
Oh, definitely Marshawn.
Frank Gore had a lot of yards, though, Adam.
Frank Gore is a compiler. It's kind of the Tim Brown argument, right? At receiver.
Yeah.
He was a wonderful compiler. Andre Reed, same thing. I was a Bills fan of that era, like back when I was a young child. But with that said, I don't know that Andre Reed's a Hall of Famer.
I'm not saying keep Frank Gore out of the Hall of Fame either. I think that Frank Gore deserves a spot in the Hall of Fame for the NFL career that he put in. But I also believe that Marshawn gets in, and I think he will get in before Frank.
I mean, just on personality alone, Marshawn should be in the Hall of Fame.
He was just one of the best of that era of football at the position that he plays. Now, we can't do anything about the fact that running back was kind of okay.
How long was his peak, though, would you say? 3 years? 4?
Well, he definitely had a 4-year peak, but he made a Pro Bowl in Buffalo. He had 2,000-yard seasons to start his career, but it really was that 2011 season through 2014 where he was the straw that stirred the drink for the Seahawks offense. And that was in 2011 before Russ got there. And then it just blew up from there. And in 2012, it was an all-pro season for him. So he has the all-pro, he has the Super Bowl ring, he has multiple seasons, he has the personality. I think he has everything that he needs. The 5-time Pro Bowls. I think he has what he needs to get in.
A 3 to 4 year peak. That's what, equivalent to Sean Alexander? Do you think Alexander's a Hall of Famer? He won an MVP.
I still think that he deserves to be. The problem with Alexander is that he was in an era where there were so many other good backs that you could point to, like LT. And you can't tell me, though, that Sean doesn't deserve in when Curtis Martin and Terrell Davis are both in. So that's where it gets me.
I don't think Terrell Davis should be in. I don't think his peak was long enough. And that's not just me. That's, again, according to Terrell Davis himself. That's what he believes.
I'm fine
and
with
I
him
agree
being
with him.
in. I just also want my guy in.
I think Curtis Martin definitely deserves to be in. He was one of the best backs of his era, and for sure.
And LT was obvious. LaDainian, and nobody's arguing whether or not LaDainian Tomlinson deserves to be in.
No, he definitely does. To me, Marshawn is one of those borderline dudes. And as a Seahawks fan and a huge Marshawn fan, of course, I want to see him in. But I think realistically speaking, it's not the shoe-in that all of our gut reactions probably says it is.
I don't think he'll be first ballot, but I think he gets in second or third.
That'd be awesome. I would love it. I just don't know that it's a guarantee.
Well, at least there are a couple Seahawks legends who are among the finalists going into this season. Dwight Freeney, legendary career with the Seahawks in 2017. And, of course, Devin Hester, first ballot Hall of Famer for the Seahawks, who played with us part-time in 2016.
Yeah, I want a all Brandon Seahawks team. I just want to see what that roster looks like.
Yeah, with guys like Franco Harris
in the backfield, Jerry Rice playing wide receiver.
Yeah, Franco sadly passed here. Passed right before the dang 50-year anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. That was a bummer.
It was a bummer, especially for the Raiders. There's enough evidence there that I'm not sure that was a catch.
Well, now's not the time to bring it up.
I mean, it ended up being a catch, and I mean, good for Franco. It's a big moment in NFL history.
He makes the all-time Seahawks Hall of Fame list, so there is that part of it.
I think that would be a pretty decent roster.
This is off-season stuff.
Yeah.
Let's get to the second half of the show.
All right, fine.
And thinking about the passing of Franco last week and just the tragedy that was, just in terms of the timing, obviously a long life for Franco. And then we had more tragedy in the NFL. Although I don't know if you can say tragedy because it now looks like Damar Hamlin is doing well coming out of his injury on Monday Night Football. But it was a tragedy in the sense that seeing what happened, it being unprecedented, that you had to essentially revive a player on the field and you didn't know what was even happening in that moment. I know I was listening to the radio for Monday Night Football and listening to the description. You know, you're always waiting to hear about whether or not a player's moving or, you know, whether or not the player's giving the thumbs up as they're going off the field is kind of that moment that, okay, things are okay with this player. And just to not have any of that described while listening, it was a really hard thing to listen to. So I can't even imagine for those of people who are watching the game, seeing the injury and then seeing what was shown on TV. I don't know what wasn't shown necessarily. It sounded like there were a lot of commercial breaks, but Kevin Harlan on the radio, not a lot of commercial breaks, and he was explaining the sights of people crying on the sidelines and then reading the report that they had to give CPR to Hamlin on the field. It was one of the most memorable experiences just listening to it and just the uncertainty around it. And I'm feeling a whole lot better now later in the week that it sounds like he's awake with his teammates. They said he was holding hands with his family. He's still in rough condition, but just knowing that he's now conscious and all the vitals are good, I feel so much better about it now toward the end of the week.
Yeah, what a crazy situation on a football field. I think both of us can say in our lifetimes we've never seen anything quite like that.
No.
You know, you've seen some guys with some bad, I mean, even just Ricardo Lockett, right? Bad spinal injury, you know, things like that. We've seen those sort of things. I've never seen a guy take a hit. And while it was a routine hit, it was a big routine hit. It wasn't nothing. It was a decent hit.
But
it wasn't
usually when those happen, the guys, when they get up, they stay up.
That was the thing, is that, or after the hit, they're down and they just kind of stay down.
Yeah.
Or they get up and they stumble immediately, right? And you're like, oh, that's not good. Or you can kind of see that stuff right away.
Yeah.
With Hamlin, it was so crazy to watch him stand up, act normal for a couple beats, right? And then it was like he was an android and somebody came up and just turned the power switch off.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like that. It was, I didn't watch it live. I was watching something else with Brittany, but watching the replay of it, and I could only watch it once. I watched it a second time accidentally. I clicked on a video that I thought might be, because everybody was talking about the players' reactions and the coaches' reactions, and I didn't see all that in lifetime. So I was looking for that, and I thought I was getting that video, and I had to watch him go down again. I hated that. I never want to have to watch that again because it was so damn scary. And like you said, it is encouraging to hear that neurologically speaking, anyways, it sounds like he's going to be okay that way. Now, what other complications come from this for him? We won't know for a good while here, but there was a minute I think we all thought, oh my gosh, like, did we just watch the first NFL player lose his life on the field? That's how it felt for a minute.
That was the big worry because everything that you were seeing and hearing, and especially when you're talking about the CPR aspect of being on the field, that was pretty scary. And that was, I think, a lot of the concern. And obviously the NFL ultimately makes the right call. They shut the game down, which, I mean, how do you keep going after that? It makes all the sense. Who knows what's going to happen in terms of, I know that a lot of people are looking and thinking about the impact of that game going into it. And still there's potential impact on the playoffs, but you get through this week, you see how the games go, you see if ultimately that game's important or not, whether or not they end up deciding to flip a coin or just not call it or however it goes. It doesn't really concern me that much. I know there's talk about, you could, push back. You have the week before the Super Bowl that you can reschedule things and whatnot, but I'd be fine if it just played out. I'd try and put myself in the position of a fan of one of those teams. Like if it were to happen to my team, it's just not that important to me that you would finish a game after all that.
Yeah, I think if you were to ask the staff and the players of the Chiefs, Bengals, Bills, who are primarily the ones affected by the outcome or non-outcome of this game, if you were to poll them, how much they cared about it, I think it would come in around 3%. I don't think they really care. It's just, that's a game that never needs to be finished.
Yeah,
because of what happened. That can live in history where it's at. And it's got bad juju written all over it. Just don't bring that genie back out of the bottle. Like, I got an idea. We can finish that game when Damar Hamlin is back and fully healthy and ready to rock and wants to play football again. That's when we finish that game. That's the only way that game is finished.
Now, as of Thursday, we hear from the Bills that their tweet saying, per the physicians caring for Damar Hamlin at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center, Damar has shown remarkable improvement over the past 24 hours. While still critically ill, he has demonstrated that he appears to be neurologically intact. His lungs continue to heal, and he is making steady progress. And they conclude by saying, we're grateful for the love and support we have received. And then you get some of the tweets from family members and the news saying that he's awake and holding hands with family. That coming from Omar Jimenez from CNN. And so with that kind of news, at least makes it so you could functionally play a football game this weekend if you're a Bills player. I don't know exactly how they're feeling, but that would make me feel better, at least knowing that he's okay.
I think that was important for not just Bills players, but every current NFL player. And honestly, too, for a lot of the former ones. You've heard a lot of them come out and talk about how the incident affected them, current players that aren't Bills and former players who, don't have any connection personally to Hamlin, but just the brotherhood of it and the idea that could be anybody at any time, right? And how shook that made so many different players around the league, and rightfully so. I think it's probably good for the league as a whole that there's some positive news coming out about Damar here, and scary deal. A lot of weird aftermath, in terms of reactions and things like that. That was a bummer.
But some cool reactions in the aftermath too. I mean, the GoFundMe page for his toy drive from 2020 being the place where everybody has built around that idea of supporting. And even in our Ring of Honor Facebook group, Daniel Weinholtz said, hey, should we get together and do a donation as a group? And I've kept it so far to primarily the Seahawkers podcast Ring of Honor group. but they've folks there have all decided that they wanted to support as a group, and we have over $500 already that we're going to donate as just our podcast group.
Little flockers are amazing. I'll throw down on that too. I've been meaning to talk to you about that and get that done, but it's really neat to see the positive reactions of the people that come together and reacted the right way. And even in the moment, a lot of people killing the NFL about the idea that they definitely wanted to start the game back up. And whether that's true or not, I don't know. I don't know that they knew exactly what they should be doing in the moment. And I think everybody finally talked about it, and give Coach Taylor and McDermott massive props for basically just figuring it out and being like, so this is what we're doing.
Yeah, they're the closest to the situation. They know how their teams are reacting on the sidelines. And I don't necessarily know how the NFL would know that without some of those discussions. So it was weird because I heard a lot of people talking about the reaction on the broadcast about them giving 5 minutes. And the weird thing with listening on the radio is I didn't get any of that part of it. I didn't hear anything about 5 minutes to get ready. It was just the description of the officials talking to the coaches on either side. That there was a description of some players warming up or seeming to maybe try and get ready. So, but whatever that communication was that went to ESPN for the TV, it wasn't going to the national broadcast on the radio side. So I just have a hard time thinking that if it was an NFL communication that the game was going to get moving again, that it wouldn't go to both broadcast partners. But who knows? Ultimately, like you said, the right choice was made.
And really, too, how angry can you be about the NFL? Let's say it did come from the NFL to the ESPN broadcast booth. All right, once we have stabilized, quote unquote, and in the ambulance and off the field, the standard procedure is a 5-minute warm up and we'll get after it again. Like if that's your initial reaction, because that's been the standard procedure for pretty much every other injury that we've seen that it requires the ambulance to come on the field. If you're that underling who's making those calls, that's the call you make because that's what you've done.
That's the procedure. That's what the rule book says.
Until somebody who's got more authority than you goes, this just isn't appropriate this time.
Yeah.
So I can't even be that mad about it because, like you said, they came to the right conclusion. And shoot, if that means giving Goodell some props, then I guess so.
I think I give the coaches more of the props because I see them as the ultimate decision makers in that moment based on what they're hearing from the players. And I don't think it was going to happen, whether or not a coach had to decide to forfeit or not forfeit, or it wasn't going to happen.
I mean, if you're Sean McDermott, how do you turn to your team and ask those grown men who just watched their brother basically die on the field and be brought back to life and be like, yeah, so strap it up, get back out there.
Right.
You can't, there's no way.
Yeah.
No.
And there might be some players that are like, okay, I guess we're doing this, and would go out there and do it.
Yeah.
But
it's not impossible, but it's just, no, definitely not.
No,
but
it was
scary.
It was good not to have to put that on them.
Yeah. Bronco Jared was the one who brought it to my attention via text as it was happening. And, he said that might be enough to have him stop watching for a while. And I told him that was a cute excuse for not watching because his team sucks.
Yeah. I'm okay with the Broncos being terrible. I mean, the Seahawks are guaranteed a top 5 draft pick now from the Broncos, no matter what happens this weekend.
Is that where it's at?
Even if the Broncos were to beat the Chargers and then the Cardinals were to lose, I think the worst it can get is the number 5 overall pick. And I don't see it getting better because the good news is that we have a top 5 draft pick. The bad news is Justin Fields is out for week 18 with a hip injury, and they were playing the Vikings, who really don't have anything to play for, which makes the even worse news worse. which I feel weird saying that it's worse news, just considering after the topic that we already talked about. But the Bears have the worst backup quarterback options in the NFL. that will virtually assure them the top 2 pick. Because
what are you talking about? In Peterman, we trust Nathan Peterman.
Did you even know that he was still in the NFL?
No,
because their normal backup to Justin Fields is Trevor Siemian, former Broncos QB. So they have Peterman. I think he only has one game where he's completed more than 8 passes this year. And in that game where he completed more than 8 passes, he also threw 3 interceptions, and they got blown out 41-9.
That sounds about right. He had that one game with, I believe it was with the Bills, or didn't he have like 5 picks or something like that?
It could be.
Yeah. Who's Captain Kirk's backup, I wonder?
That's a really good question. I know that they're better than the options for the Bears because Peterman's backup is Tim Boyle, who averages 2 picks a game when he's asked to throw more than 20 passes.
Right. Yeah. Former Detroit Lion, right?
I think so.
This is a loss for sure for the Bears.
Yeah.
Big Dick Nick Mullins.
He's good enough.
That's what I'm saying. I like, as a backup quarterback, I love me some Nick Mullins.
I think it's still likely that the Broncos could lose to the Chargers. Now, the Chargers may or may not have anything to play for based, I think, on the outcome of Saturday's games.
Okay.
So they could find themselves wherever their game's scheduled that it ends up not mattering too much. And either way, 3 or 5.
Yeah, anywhere from 3 to 5. Okay, yes, please. I would have been thrilled with a top 10 pick coming into this season.
Well, the Seahawks could still have their own top 10 pick. I was looking at the potential for where the Seahawks actually pick. Mm-hmm. And considering they had the worst strength of schedule, it plays a big factor because of playing the NFC South, playing the NFC West, and teams like the Broncos and Raiders. If they would have lost last week and then and then lose to the Rams in week 18, it would have been the number 10 overall pick. So they'd have 2 top 10 picks. Even if the Seahawks lose against the Rams, which the NFL clearly wants, it puts them at 8-9. And then you're counting on the Saints beating the Panthers, Tennessee beating the Jags, Cleveland beating the Steelers, Jets beating the Dolphins, and Commanders beating the Cowboys. And even if those 5 teams win, then you still end up with the number 10 overall pick. So a range of, if you were to lose, any number of those teams win, you're looking at one spot worse from the 10 pick overall for whichever outcome of those games those teams win.
So there's only 2 acceptable outcomes of the Seahawks here versus Rams, and then the rest of the league. And one of them is the Seahawks win and the Packers lose. That's one acceptable outcome.
Right.
And the other is for the Seahawks to lose and all 5 of those other teams that you talked about win. Nothing in between. No. It's one of those 2 things. That's how I'm seeing it.
I see it that way too. But shoot, let's say that the Saints and the Titans win, or the Saints and the Browns win, and then we have the 12th pick overall. Yeah.
There is something to the narrative, because you know how it's going to be spoken about throughout the draft, in the draft process of, Seahawks have this pick and it's not even theirs. They got it from the Broncos. They didn't even finish with a top 10 pick of their own. That sounds better, right?
It does. And worst case scenario would be, I think, for the Seahawks to win and the Packers to win. And then you're left with what it amounts to, I think, the highest or next highest draft pick. They'd have pick 17 or 18, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. That'd be the biggest bummer, because you'd have some hope going into that late game too.
See, the NFL, they worked it out to where we do have interest, but most of that is because of the Seahawks. I would be way less interested in this final game of the season if I were, say, a Broncos fan.
Oh, yeah. I would have been way less interested in this season almost from about week 3 on, right? That would be about the point where you start to wonder, is this actually going to get worked out? Now, I do believe, and we kind of hinted at it at the beginning of the pod, I think this next year is a Russ redemption year. I really do. I really do.
Can you cheer for a Russ redemption year if a name like, I don't know, Jim Harbaugh? Yeah. It seems like a fun pairing of Russell Wilson and Jim Harbaugh as coach and quarterback going into next season. Like I kind of want that to happen.
That is a odd pairing in terms of personality seemingly, right? With the kind of hard-nosed, gruff and tough Harbaugh and, the perpetually positive Russ. But it would be interesting. It'd make for good TV. I don't hate Harbaugh nearly as much, or really in any way, now that he's not the Niners coach. He's high entertainment.
Right. It was more of a rivalry hatred, right?
Yeah, he just happened to be the petulant child that coached the San Francisco 49ers at the time. Now that he's a Michigan guy, or back to being a Michigan guy, the antics and everything, they're just kind of more entertaining. I think that him going to the Broncos is unlikely. Why would Harbaugh go and try to fix Russ in Denver for less money than he makes now at Michigan? Why would he end up making less? Because the college coaches make way more than the NFL coaches.
Yeah, but professional coaches can make more too. Then the Waltons have a bunch of money,
but they just don't.
Well, I guess I would have to say, as Harbaugh, you have to pay me more than I'm making right now. That seems like a logical request that a team would have to overcome to hire you if they wanted you.
Do you think the Waltons are ready to open up the checkbook yet again for another huge contract? That's a massive overpay. Are they excited about that? Or I think that the Broncos would be better served to try to find the next Zach Taylor, McDaniels.
They've tried that, though. I feel like, because how many of their last head coaches since John Fox have actually been a head coach before coaching the Broncos?
True.
I think you got to make a turn if you're the Broncos and go with somebody established.
But that's the conundrum from them. If you're an established coach, why would you want to go to somewhere that you could fail massively? Like it's just not a shoe-in.
No, I think you would have to look at it as seeing the pieces being there. And, Harbaugh did it with defense with the 49ers, and they were just complementary enough with the offense and the run game that if he sees enough in Russell Wilson that he could turn him around. And I feel like there should be that sense. If you think about the things that are there, that the pieces that may be missing, I think that coaching was a big piece of what was missing from the Broncos this year.
Coaching, health, overall talent on the offense. The offense, the talent that's on that offense is so grossly overestimated. We talked about it from the beginning of the year until now. Courtland Sutton can't get separation. He's like old Des Bryant at the end of his career.
Oh, if you're talking about, sorry to interrupt, but
yeah,
the receivers, I would agree with you. But when you're talking about Williams in the backfield coming back and being healthy, like they have some good pieces on the offensive line. I think if you compare the receiving core of the Broncos to the 2013 Seahawks, I could see some comparisons there.
I mean, maybe. But then again, so they bring in Harbaugh and he wants to play Harbaugh ball. How's that going over with Russ? Or is he now properly humbled? I don't know. It's going to be very interesting. I don't know that Russ is going to accept it. I think they need to bring in an offensive guy.
Well, Harbaugh is an offensive guy. He's a former quarterback. I think that that's what Russ needs. But I do have that question too of, is it what Russ would accept? And yeah. I don't think he has a whole lot of leverage at this point either.
Sure he does. He's got $256 million worth of leverage.
Yeah. Well, it's retire or I'm just going to do what I want, no matter who you hire as the coach, I guess.
I mean, that's kind of been his MO, right? Although you have seen in the last couple of weeks, he's looked better. He looked pretty good against the Chiefs for the most part.
Yeah.
In comparison to some of the other outings, there's still something there. And I think he can get more consistent again and string it together. I think if they have a little better injury luck on the offensive line, they'll do a little bit better. I'm not sure they have a lot of great pieces on the offensive line, though. Garrett Bowles had a flash in the pan good year. And then who else on that line do you really like? Cushenberry's terrible.
Yeah.
The guards are so at best. I don't know. I just don't think there's a lot of talent there in the trenches, and they don't have the cap room or the draft picks to go out and fix it.
Well, they do have a first round pick now after the Chubb trade, so they at least have something. I'm with Nathan though, who emailed in this past week, and he sent me a link to one of his interviews, and I'm not necessarily going to play the clip, but it was mostly Russ having to answer some pretty tough questions that I don't think he's used to. And I wanted to say with Nathan in terms of, he makes the comment of, I'm ready for the season to be over so that we can go back to not rooting against Russ. And I feel that same way. He's questioning whether or not Russ has that mentality to pull out of a really tough season. And I think he does. I think we have to give Russ a lot of credit for, I think in terms of on the field toughness and perseverance and the idea of overcoming adversity. I think he has all of that mentality necessary to bounce back after a tough year.
Even if it's faded a bit over the last couple of years when he starts to kind of want and covet superstar status in that celebrity quarterback thing, doesn't mean it's gone. And he can go back to that well. You can find that again. And I think he will. It's not like he's a mentally weak dude, like you were saying.
Yeah.
I think as long as he can put into perspective that he really needs to be all in on football and leave everything. He's got, after this last contract, he's got enough money. Leave the endorsements alone. Leave the public appearances alone.
Well, you can still do some of that for the NFL stuff.
No, just stay out of it. Just stay out of it.
Yeah.
Go back to the lab. Lose about 15 pounds of mass. I think he'd get back to it. And I think he will. That's my prediction anyways.
Well, like I said, I'm with Nathan. I'm ready to root for it now that the season's over. One more week, though.
Yeah.
We only need one more week. Now, with the game ending, with the Chargers and the Broncos, with that ending before the Lions and Packers game, how quickly can you shift a curse toward another quarterback? Like, I don't know, Aaron Rodgers.
Well, ordinarily it takes, you need like kind of an off season for it to brew up. Right.
Yeah.
But there are some magical universe portals that have been opened up to throw a curse through because of Aaron Rodgers' ayahuasca trips. So there's a portal to his mind's eye that I could throw a curse down. I think I might just have to get messed up on ayahuasca to make it happen, just so we can get that connection through the fabric of the universe to transfer it that quickly.
All right. Well, to get you there, if you need any of the help from our producers, we do have some new producers who came in this week. So we want to welcome some new members of the flock. And we want to thank, of course, our executive producers, DCH, Dustin Monk, Brian Shaw, and Rebecca Christensen. I have to think that at least one of those four has the ayahuasca hookup for you.
Wow. I can't believe you just basically accused all of the executive producers of being possible drug dealers. That's classy.
Not possible drug dealers. One who possibly, like, someone has to have someone that they went to high school with that used to be a drug dealer that has that connection. Like, this can be a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon thing.
I see. Okay. Like, so the loose association with the shady type. Well, I guess that's probably why they sponsor this show.
Well, other people wanting to sponsor the show and help produce it, Dan Nicholson gave us a raise from $225 for the year to $300 for the year. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, big thanks to Dan, man. That's amazing.
It's huge. Totally Vapid came in at $3 a month. Welcome to the flock to Totally Vapid.
Hey, I love the name. Vapid is a word that is fun to say, and I enjoy it when it's used in a sentence. As a vocab nerd, that's one up on the top of my list. Yeah.
And one of my favorite donations that have come through this year, just because it's meaningful in Steven's own way, as Steven comes in with a 2306 donation, says, what can I say? Go Hawks and Lions. And yeah, the score donation. See, the thing about value for value, you can choose however you want to donate. And Steven has been doing it through donating whenever the Seahawks win and sending us the score in terms of dollars and change.
Hey, I like the system, man. And really, it helps us out a lot, too, because then we just root for more points from the Seahawks, right?
And against the Rams, how can you not root for more points?
That's a good point.
So if you want to become a member of the flock, you can go to getintheflock.com. Also, I mentioned earlier the fund for Damar Hamlin. And if you do want to get in on that, I'm going to send the donation on Sunday. And so we're on Venmo at Hawkra. And if you send in a donation there, if you just tag it Hamlin, I'll know to put it in the pot with the others. So if you want to be a part of that group that supports the Damar Hamlin GoFundMe, if you send through Venmo, tag it Hamlin, send it to @Hawkra. I will include it, and we'll send off what we have on Sunday.
Heck yeah, man. I can't believe we're already to the amount that we are. It just shows the generosity and compassion of the little flockers, man. Every other week I'm like, I can't believe you guys, you're amazing. And then every other week I'm blown away yet again. You guys are incredible humans.
Well, it's cool that they wanted to do it together. Initially I thought, okay, well, because I want to make a donation too. I was thinking, well, we all know where the GoFundMe is. We can all just do our own thing and support it if we want to and not. But when Dan chimed in on the Ring of Honor and brought it up as an option, and then there were, 10 other people that said, yeah, we want to do it that way.
Almost instantly.
I can't say no to that.
No, you can't. It's incredible.
Before we move on to get to some Pick'em League standings, and you're not going to hear from Adam because I recorded this after the fact, because I forgot to get to the Pick'em League standings because I was distracted. So, Pick'em League standings. I'm just here so I don't get fined. Kalispell MT Hawk and Well Pete said we are awesome. Still up on top. The three-way tie for first place going into the final week of the regular season. 166 points for all three. My Dixon is bigger. The Sofa King at 165. Just 1 point out of that lead and 2 points out of that lead after winning week 17 with 13 points. We've got G. Haley. And a five-way tie, actually, for first, along with G. Haley. G. Haley, Great Rolls of Fire, Van Isle Hawk Fan, Yaka Hawk, and Poo Poo Na Platter, all with 13 points correct. And because we didn't have a tiebreaker, all five finishing. If those standings remain once the end of the season concludes, I will honor the fact that all five of you finished on top this week. Everyone will get a prize, but we'll see, depending on how CBS does their scoring, if one person ends up being crowned the winner based on some other tiebreaker. If they count the outcome of the Bills game toward week 17, then there will be only one winner. But for now, all five of you in the running for winning week 17. Thanks to Hugh, who came in with an email this last week at Lloydzilla out on Twitter, says, firstly, I'd like to thank both of you. Evie was really excited to hear you read out her email, and I'd probably doubly thank you, as she now insists on calling herself the arch overlord of the Pick'em League, and is currently compiling a list of all the dirty cheaters who picked against the Hawks over the weeks to send to Brandon, along with threatening me that if I annoy her, she will write in and get you to change all my picks to losses.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I enjoy the fact that the royal arch overlord of the Pick'em League, Evie, Her Highness, has some leverage over her dad. This is great. I love this. And if you do dare to cheat, understand the wrath that will come down upon you.
Hugh continues, says, who would have thought at the start of the season we would be one win away from the playoffs? And if we hadn't had silly losses against the NFC South, we could be playing for the NFC West title. What a surprising, fun, and enjoyable season, yet also frustrating to think what could have been. For me, we give Geno a 2-year deal, invest in the defense, and a WR3, plus bring Goodwin back. Eskridge can go for me now, and let's see how good we can be next year. Can I make a nomination for Do Better? It has to be the waste of skin and air that is Skip Bayless. His comments after the Monday night game were crass and insensitive at best, and just downright awful and inhuman at worst. Richard Sherman was absolutely right about that man. Skip Bayless, after this week, everyone is better at life than you. Do better. As always, go Hawks and catfish the whiners, lambs, and cards from Hugh.
That was an awesome email, Hugh. Couple things in there. One, I've been resistant to the idea that they need more wide receiver help as a whole. But over the last couple weeks, I've come around to that way of thinking. I get it. I'm in, especially with Tyler getting up there in years a little bit and Eskridge not really panning out. I could see another wide receiver or two being needed throughout the draft process here. I'm cool with it. Ordinarily, that would piss me off. I'd if they didn't draft like a guard, right? And they went for a wideout, like a really good guard or a really good center. But I can see the need for it now. Regarding the Skip Bayless stuff, I only saw the one tweet, and maybe there was more, but the one that I saw was, something about the injury being bad. Hey, what does this do to, things going forward? And then ended with, I guess none of it really matters or something along those lines, right? That none of that actually really matters.
I think it was because it was Skip trying to sound sensitive and still kind of sounding like an ass.
Well, he always sounds like an ass. Also, too, I mean, if you are honest with yourself, after he was, picked up, put in the ambulance as they're talking about restarting the game or not restarting the game, tell me you didn't have the thought, how does this affect things going forward?
I mean, we're still thinking about that, and the NFL is still working through that. Just as we're recording on Thursday, I saw Bob Condotta tweet out that the NFL's considering the idea of adding an 8th playoff spot going into the playoffs, because then if you needed to finish the Bills game against the Bengals, you do it in its own week, and then because then the first seed is going to end up having 3 weeks off, and it makes it tough to do that. And so there's the consideration of, do you add an 8th playoff team? That way everybody plays that first weekend of the playoffs, 1 versus 8 seed, 2 versus 7. It's something that they're considering, it sounds like.
Okay. I mean, I get that you have to put a bunch of options on the table. It just didn't happen.
And Adam, if you're the NFL and your option is make more money or less money, another playoff game makes a ton of sense.
True. That's hard to argue with when it comes from their mentality. That's for sure. But yeah, there's a lot of discussion about what to do and what not to do and all that. Maybe the timing wasn't great for Skip there. And I'm not a big Skip defender. I think he might be a fine. I don't know him personally, but his public persona, he's a walking dickhead, and I don't much care for him. His private persona might be just fine, but I feel like most of us are angry that this man is potentially dying on the field in front of us. And so you have that feeling that you need to put somewhere. All of that kind of ended up going there, and none of it really mattered.
I'm not going to defend Skip. I think the timing of it was terrible, and I agree with you. I would absolutely give Skip a do better. And I do know that there were a lot of people who had worse comments than Skip on Twitter, like the people who were concerned about their parlay, or who were really concerned about trying to fit whatever happened into whatever agenda they believe politically. I thought that was a lot more gross.
Tasteless.
But yeah, I can't defend Skip. He's a jerk too.
Oh, sure. I think his level of jerkishness in that moment is a couple tiers off from some of the people, like you said, with political agendas and, betting lines and things of that nature. Because that's truly crass and ridiculous. I just know in the moment I thought to myself, I wonder how this affects things. No, that's the other thing. Again, about freaking stupid Twitter. Don't press send. Like, don't have a stream of consciousness displayed on Twitter. Take some advice from Dora the Explorer. Let's stop and think, like, before you press send. And that's probably what Skip should have done there.
We do have the Bard coming in, John Davison, saying, "Hi, fellas. Over the moon to beat the Jets and stay in the playoff race, but didn't see the Packers coming up in my rearview mirror as I wrongly thought we beat the Rams and we were in. Then the Bills game brought it all back into perspective with those awful scenes. I send him best wishes from everyone on this side, and it makes results irrelevant, really. So let's see how it all pans out and see what the weekend brings. Go Hawks and Bills," from the Bard. I feel weird reading it in the voice now after reading the content, but I think the sentiment was important, and it ties up, I think, how a lot of us are feeling.
Yeah, and it shows just how that affected not just football fans in the U.S., but worldwide, right? Like, this is something that you will always remember this game.
Yeah.
And this day. And that's both sad and, it will be something that I think going forward, might help DeMar Hamlin going forward too. This being so on the front of everybody's brain, and it will be for a very long time. He should get a lot of support and opportunities in all of that stuff. And I hope that helps him moving forward.
Absolutely. On to do better and better at life.
All right, man. Might do better this week.
Do we feel like do better this week?
I do. Do. Because why can't our team just be normal? Can you just be normal? Don't be weird. And the reason why I say that is, number one, Jason Myers misses a 41-yard field goal for no reason. And that was annoying. Like, it's not like it was a 57-yarder like, Greg the Leg had. It's a 41-yard in this day and age, basic chip shot in good weather, misses it. Just make your field goals. Just make them. You've been making them all year. But no, he misses that. The Seahawks squandering great field position and not being able to at least put 3 points on the board multiple times throughout the second half. And you say, well, why does this matter? Why are you mad about this? Because this fat up my freaking Fail Mary bet on Prop Stars this week, and it cost me the win this week because at the end of the game, there could have been 1,000 outcomes that happened that would have been good for my deal. But no, the Seahawks choose the weird end of the game outcome that screws my Fail Mary up of the Seahawks winning from 19 to 24 points and robs me of the win because Pete Carroll, being a weird coach, like, why on earth do you freaking go for it on 4th and 6 or whatever it was with 2 minutes left in the game when you can just kick the field goal like 7 out of 10 of the other NFL head coaches would have done? And that because it's just normal. I understand there's this tiny percentage of possible advantage if you pick up the 4th down there of just running the clock out and shortening the game.
Yeah.
But you didn't even get it. Like, just kick the field goal, be normal. Like, when it's 4th and 2 and you're on the opponent's 40, go for it. Like, it just the way he decides to go or not go on 4th downs for the most part is the direct opposite of mine. It cost me a bet this week and it just pissed me off in the moment, even though it ultimately doesn't matter at all. Jason Myers, Pete Carroll, be normal, do better.
Well, my do better is for you because, see, this is the exact reason I didn't want to do a betting show because it messes up your mentality. You should have been happy for that win over the Jets, happy that they had an opportunity to go to the playoffs in the final week of the season. And here you are stewing over the fact that, they didn't win by 19 or more points because they missed a field goal or they went for it on 4th down at the end of the game and still won by 17 points. You, Adam, you do better.
I didn't say I wasn't pleased with the win and excited about the idea of going to the playoffs.
No, but it still it poisoned your mentality at the end of the game when really you should have been happy with the win.
Okay, so my mentality at the end of the game, if I didn't have my fictitious bet on the betting show, it's just for bragging rights. Man, I want to win. I'm competitive. I always compete.
I know, and it gives you another reason to be competitive.
But if it hadn't had existed, my pretend bet, my reaction to it would have been like, what are you doing? Just kick the field goal and move on with your life. But I guess it doesn't matter. It's but it's just weird. It's weird. So I was slightly more angry about it because it gifted Wilson another, I'm not going to say erroneous, but
no, I think I thought Clinton kept it this week.
Oh, maybe Clinton did win it. All right. Now both Clinton and Wilson have a stain title for a week.
I mean, you legitimately didn't win your Fail Mary.
Yeah, because the Seahawks can't just play normal football. They got to get knocked out of field goal at the end of the second field goal range in the second half by going sack and complete.
I put part of it on you, knowing that now the calendar year has turned over to 2023. It's an odd year, making Jason Myers a very average field goal kicker. You didn't calculate that into your prediction. Why would you take a victory of 19 or more points, knowing that there was that potential of missing a field goal by Myers?
Well, you make a lot of great points there. And the first one being that you're right. I did not take that into account that Myers sucks now for this year. That was dumb. But I also counted on them punching it in for touchdowns. And again, it's the Fail Mary bet, right? You got to pick something that's plus 1,200 or above for odds, which are long shots. And that was the best long shot that I could figure. And you
had to feel pretty good about it based on the way that Mike White and the defense was playing.
Heck yeah. And scoring 17 points early. And then coming out and getting the field goal in the beginning of the second half, I was like, heck yeah, man. They're going to get there. Here we go. Here we go. Just stabbed right in the back.
On to Better at Life.
My Better at Life than Skip Bayless this week is for none other than the voice of the Seahawks, Steve Rabel, who was having none of it. He was having none of it through the broadcast that Sauce Gardner was the defensive rookie of the year. He was not happy. He took every opportunity throughout the broadcast to take every shot at the national media, anybody who thought Sauce was the defensive rookie player of the year, to talk up Tariq, just every other play. Like Sauce would make a play out of the field and be like, well, we all know the defensive player of the year wears blue, but that was a decent play, I guess. He just throw him in there all freaking day. And so listening to it over the radio broadcast, Steve Rabel having his dude, Tariq Woolen's back. Better at Life than Skip Bayless.
Well, my Better at Life this week, and I also want to finish with a light note after some of the heavy topics. With that in mind, my Better at Life this weekend also comes from the Jets game and someone who was there at the game. I don't know if you caught this watching the TV broadcast, but there was a person in the crowd who brought a sign with them that said something to the effect of, "My New Year's resolution is to attend a live Seahawks game." That is super smart. You pick a resolution you can knock out early in the year. Day one, it's over. You figured it out. New Year's resolution solved. You're off to a great start. You are better at life than Skip Bayless.
That's even better than my New Year's strategy, which is to make no resolutions and call them all stupid. And then that way there's no pressure and then you're off the hook.
No,
this is even better because now you're successful. You can be like, yeah, I made a New Year's resolution. Already nailed it.
Exactly. Yeah. That person knows what they're doing. They're doing it right.
That's smart stuff. That's next level.
Now you know. Now you know better for next year.
I do. I think next year's New Year's resolution is to wake up on New Year's Day.
And I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
go Hawks.
Go Hawks.